to another episode of the Aliens and Cowboys podcast. I'm Joe. With me, as always, are Garrett and Nate.
Hey, guys.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming. That's
Nate,
right,
Nate,
guys.
Nate.
Usually I have to start my own slow chant, but I appreciate that.
I thought you'd be chanting me.
Yeah. Guys, we're excited about this episode. We have been mentioning it in previous episodes, and it is finally here. Game of Thrones Season 8 is coming up in just a few days. It's Sunday, right?
That's right.
It's coming Sunday. So what we're going to be doing for you guys tonight is recapping Seasons 1 through 7. We're not going to break down each individual season necessarily completely in depth, but we are going to touch on some major themes, characters, go through a variety of different things about the show, what we like about it, dislikes, things of that nature. So we're excited to get into it and discuss that a little bit. Before that, we don't want to spend too much time on pop culture because we do think this has the potential to run fairly long. Because of that, we're anticipating we'll probably be breaking this episode up into 2 parts. They'll be made available to all of you listeners pretty much right away at the same time, but it will be likely a 2-parter episode. So we will break that up in the middle and resume with a part 2. Before going into part 1 here, though, I wanted to correct one of my mistakes from last week, and if I was a listener, I'd be mad at me for getting hyped about Batman vs. Ninja Turtles and then saying I think it was available immediately, and it's not. So I'm sorry, guys. I did check. I believe digital release is May 14th, okay? And then they will have 4K Ultra HD combo pack releasing June 4th. So not available quite yet.
We probably lost listeners.
Probably. I'm sorry,
we lost
guys.
listeners for that, Joe.
No, I feel awful. I do apologize for that. But in other really brief good news, Star Wars Celebration starts tomorrow.
Nice.
So that'll be fun too.
Nice.
A lot of cool stuff happening.
Well, speaking about your listener you lost, we probably gained one listener. My brother has yet to listen or download this podcast. He doesn't even know the title of it correctly. He thinks he does. He does not. But I've kind of forced him to download. He is a Game of Thrones fan. He's excited for this. He's actually probably more excited for the Masters, which is also this Sunday. A couple listeners I know of are basically going to watch the Masters all day and then go into Game of Thrones. So they're kind of like not moving from the couch. But basically my brother, if he's going to listen, this will probably be his first episode. I just want to say, obviously, go download the rest of them. You know, tell the rest of the family, tell whatever friends you have.
That's right.
You know,
5 stars.
That's right. I better see a positive review on iTunes from you, and we'll go forward. So this particular episode is going to hopefully be exciting, fun, get you guys kind of revved up in the mood for Game of Thrones. If you even need that, if not, go watch the trailer. That will probably get you revved up as well.
For sure.
Like Joe said, we're not breaking down the seasons. We're not breaking down the episodes. We're going to kind of break down categorically, like we do a movie review, the show seasons 1 through 7. So before we start that, guys, I just want to get, what are your initial thoughts on Game of Thrones as a whole? What does the show mean to you? What are your thoughts on the show? Nate, you can go first.
Love the fantasy elements of this, and also love the politics and the backstabbing, as probably everyone does, and also their ability to like attach to characters who have such like little screen time as far as how many characters are actually involved in all these seasons. And then obviously I'm taking all the topics, but how you can't expect anything to really happen the way you think it will.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah,
Joe?
it's very true. And that's one of the things I would agree with, especially, is the fact that I am constantly caught off guard while watching the show. You really can't predict. Nobody's safe. There's always something new, a curveball they're throwing at you that alters how you thought things were going to play out, and they can change it just at the drop of a hat. I also really like the fantasy elements as well, and I like how it kind of made that mainstream. In a way, you can go into work now and talk about dragons and epic battles, and people are like, oh yeah, I want to talk about that too. Which, being a lifelong fantasy sci-fi nerd, I can tell you that has not been the case until recent years. So it's pretty exciting to have some common ground where everybody almost has watched the show, and you can get excited about those kind of fantasy elements and the political intrigue, and it's just a really well done show. A lot of great acting, and I think the script as well overall is very well written too.
Yeah, well, and I agree. And I used to kind of explain the show to people who had not seen it as it's a combination of House of Cards meets Lord of the Rings. You know, that you have a lot of the politics, you have this fantasy trope to it, you've got these, you know, epic battles, characters, stuff like that, mixed with a lot of backstabbing. This is a show that's kind of interesting because as we're going forward in a time of streaming, have an entire show downloaded at one time and not have to waiting week by week for the episodes to come out, this is probably the last show that people are going to say, at Sunday at 8 o'clock, I'm tuning into this.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Right? Like, this is, going forward, It's going to be Amazon. Like, when Amazon releases Lord of the Rings, they're going to release the entire thing.
Right.
You know, Netflix, you know, just shows are going to, this idea of everybody's watching the same show at the same exact time is done. You know, this is probably that last thing that connects everything. And if you think about HBO is one of those, how should I say, channels that not everybody had growing up. A lot of people didn't have HBO. A lot of people didn't have access to it. Even now, it's probably one of the least subscribed to subscription services, although they have such an amazing category of movies and, you know, all their TV shows are really good.
Yeah.
You're missing out if you don't subscribe to it. And I do know that some people will subscribe to HBO just for this and then cancel the subscription as soon as it's done, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably pretty common
I
as
have
well.
some family friends that definitely do that. Just for Game of Thrones, they've got HBO, and then they'll cancel everything.
I have to admit, I probably did it for, I think it was season 4 or 5. I did the same thing. I added it just for that time and then got rid of it. But, you know, the other thing about this show is, so as a huge fan of my number one show always was Sopranos.
That's right.
And that was, you know, HBO's golden goose for the longest time. And it was its most popular show. This has by far surpassed that. You're talking
easily.
You're talking doubling the viewership of this HBO show. And again, I don't think it really caught. I mean, it was popular. It was successful. I think it was by like season 3 that it started catching those people, Joe, that never would have had these discussions on these fantasy tropes that you talk about, started watching this show.
Yeah.
And I just think this is, I don't know, where do you guys, let me ask you this though, where do you guys rank this show? Where's this sit in your is it on your Mount Rushmore?
Yes.
I would say so as well.
Top 4? For sure.
See, to be fair, I don't think it makes my top 4. I think it's in my top 10.
Fair enough.
I do think that the show is very good. I think also one of the reasons why it's so good is that the books aren't done and nobody knows how it's going to end. So because the writers have surpassed where the book is, everybody's now on an equal playing field. Because you always had those people who did read the books and were like, oh, well, in the book it went like this, or that. You know, the Red Wedding wasn't nearly as bad on the show as it was in the book. Fine, I get it. As somebody who diehard Harry Potter fan, the books are way better than the movies. So I fully understand that. But the idea that people would say, oh, I knew that character was going to die, like, that guy's ruining it for everybody, right? Or spoiler alert, this guy dies. This was a show, like Nate said, you can't, if you didn't read the books, you had no idea what was coming.
Yeah. Just completely caught off guard by so many different things, different plot points.
I really like it from the standpoint of the writer getting an opportunity to write the story 2 completely different ways. And I don't know of too many other stories that are told where the movies come out first and then the later books come out after the fact.
Right. Yeah, what a bizarre position I think George R.R. Martin has found himself in because of that. Because I believe these originally came out late 90s, for the books anyway. I think the book series began in the late 90s and slowly has been releasing books ever since. So now, the author has seen his own work surpassed by the TV series. I can't think of any other author or book to TV media movie translation that's happened to before. So,
well, another kind of neat thing is, let me ask you this before I go farther: have any of you read the books?
I think I bought you the books.
You did buy me the books. I did have them. I do have them. I know where they're at. I just have not read them.
I got to brush the dust off.
Yeah, I did try to read the first book back when you bought them for me, and very similar to the show. Why I think the show is really kind of different than a lot of other things we've seen before. There's no main character. At least there's no main character you could really say, that's the main guy.
Yeah, it changes perspective.
The books do the same thing. Each chapter, categorically, spends its time from a perspective of a different person.
Okay.
So like one chapter...
no narrative, really.
Right, there's one chapter that will be dominated by Arya's perspective of something, and it will switch to somebody else's point of view. So the point of view is constantly changing, just like the show. It's constantly changing, who's the main character. Because, to be fair, we'll get to this discussion. I do believe in the first season, Ned Stark is the main character. Right? Do we agree to that?
Yeah.
I would agree, and that helps.
Yes.
We'll touch on that later, but that's, I think, how things begin to subvert expectations. Yeah. But
let me ask you this then. When did you guys start watching the show? Like, what made you watch the show?
I can't even remember. It's been so long now. I want to say I started. I probably wasn't like episode 1 there watching it. I probably heard some stories, word of mouth, and like started getting into it. But I felt like I probably started watching before the end of season 1.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think I was started within season 2 while that was airing. I started watching season 1.
Gotcha. Okay, and I would have been a little after that because the first 2 seasons were lent to me, like in the box set.
Yep.
So probably around the time season 3 was actually airing,
Yep.
I started watching 1 and 2. I would say.
Well, a good friend of mine that I grew up with, he's the one that told me to watch the show, and I took his advice because he was the one that convinced me to watch Sopranos, which was amazing. And it's an HBO show, and again, I've really enjoyed HBO shows up to that point. It was probably the first 8 minutes of the first episode where you get those kind of those guards, those random people kind of out in the snow, maybe the Watchmen or the Night Watch people.
Yeah.
And the White Walker basically, comes up and takes them out.
Yeah.
When I saw the White Walker, I turned it off, and I was like, "This is dumb." It kind of reminded me of the polar bear in Lost. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So the first time I ever watched Lost, when the first polar bear shows up, I said, "This show's so stupid now." Like I was in it until that point. I was in it for the first 7 minutes, and like the 8th minute, I turned it off.
Huh.
And then I waited, and then I came back to it, and it was great. It was really good.
See, I was the exact opposite. Important to note distinction between the book as well for the show, because the book, if memory serves me correctly, I tried reading this in college, and it starts with that opening sequence with the White Walker interaction.
Yeah.
And so that hooked me. That's the part I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And then it started to get, dare I say, bogged down a bit in some of the other parts that it just kind of felt slow to me.
Okay.
Now, the show did not. Like, the show still hooked me from that moment, but, I mean, from there forward, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm on board with this for the show.
So I'll tell you this, though. I think that because it's like the absence of the White Walkers going forward for like the next 4 seasons,
That's true, yeah.
like kept me in it.
I think you get to build up the context.
Right. Had White Walkers been in there like from day one all the time, I probably wouldn't have watched this show. And I'll be on the record to say I think the first 3 or 4 seasons of the show are definitely better than the last 3 seasons. I think seasons 1 through 4 are better than seasons 5, 6, and 7. I really do. I think the political backstabbing, I think the kind of the human versus human element of the fighting is way better than we started than when the dragons are actually like destroying everybody. I think it's really cool. It's really neat. But I enjoyed the first 4 seasons better. I think it's a better show the first 4 seasons. You guys have a preference on that?
I would say, once again, I'm flip-flopped. So
that's
the
fine.
fantasy... Yeah, no, and that's fair. I do enjoy, I should preface, the political intrigue side of it, of course, and I think the script was stronger,
Yes.
to your point, in those first 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Once it started to transition from the political intrigue into maybe more stereotypical fantasy elements,
Yeah.
visually, I was very excited, and I enjoy the later seasons because of that.
Okay.
But I think the script isn't quite as tight, the writing isn't quite as tight, and they kind of start to throw things against the wall at points to see what sticks.
Okay.
But those first few seasons, the writing and the plot points, I think, are great.
So we're obviously going to dive into this throughout these categories we're going to get to here shortly. But what about the last 3 seasons really hooks you? Because like for me, the first like 3 or 4 seasons, like the dynamic I think of Tyrion in the first seasons. He is a way better character in the first seasons when he's way at his strength.
Yes.
And he's the guy that really wins everybody's heart over at the beginning of the show, right? Like he's probably everybody's most favorite character. Majority of people. And he's batting 1,000 in seasons like 2, 3, and 4. He's just doing awesome work here. And the combination of him with Varys and Littlefinger and their political triangle they got going on when he's Hand of the King, like to me that's like the pinnacle of the show, and that's the best that show ever got. When they're doing the zombie trope, it's fine, I guess. I don't know. It just, you lose it. I think I lose it because the villains to me have no nuance now. Like when I know that this evil force is coming south, there's no nuance to who the Night King is, as far as we know yet, unless they're going to show us something in the next season.
Yeah, I hope they build on that a little bit.
You briefly get him when he's being created in the
Right.
as they show the what is it? I can't think of their names. The forest,
I call them forest fairies. I don't know. The kids that are like
children of the
immortals.
forest,
Yeah,
or whatever,
exactly.
They push the dragon glass. And
Yeah, you
like,
can already tell. There's probably somebody at home screaming. These people don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
You're right,
Sorry,
but try reviewing these seasons and all their names. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Or spelling them.
Yeah.
Or just spelling in general name. No, but I think that the idea that when kind of the Lannisters are kind of the villains, there's so much nuance to that family that I'll get into and what I really like about them versus just this force that just wants to kill everything for no particular reason.
Yeah,
So-
there's something you kind of build up in your head with your own imagination with a lot of these things, and then you see it on screen and you're like, yeah, that's awesome, but then it's like, and you see him again and again and again, and it's kind of like, it kind of ruins that, what you've built up in your mind for that.
Well, and there's such a difference between the Night King and kind of those like lieutenant people versus like specifically like the zombie walkers.
Yeah,
Yes, there's a
the actual
huge difference.
Whites that they
Yeah.
have that they raise to fight for them exactly versus
Yeah.
those generals. And I like the character design actually of the generals.
Oh, I did too. It's
Yeah,
great.
it looks
Yeah.
really cool.
Okay, so before we get to our first category, anything else to add on the show as a whole?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we can dive right on.
Let's
into
hit it.
Let's
Yeah,
do it
let's do
controversial. Okay. Also, sorry. We did say we would have a special guest with us tonight last week.
Oh yes.
He could not make it. However, he got these categories ahead of time, and he put his opinion in there. So I have his opinion, and I will share that with you guys, and we can get kind of your response to what he's thinking. So let's do the first category is what this show is probably most famous for, the most shocking death. Who wants to start with that one?
Nate, you want to run with this one first?
Yeah, I can take one. I don't want
Go ahead.
to try to be different and take a different ones, but
No, hold on.
most shocking death.
Yep.
All right.
Hold on, let me preface this. Most shocking death to you.
To me.
Yep.
Okay. My most shocking death is Oberyn, the Viper.
Yeah.
I hope that wasn't yours.
Nope.
But you finally think like this whole show is about like rooting for the underdog and the bastards and the people that like don't get what's coming to them, sort of thing. And then you see he's facing the Mountain throughout the entire every season. He's just an animal and destroys everything in his path. And you get this little dancing guy with a lance going around, and he's just tearing him up in this one-on-one combat.
It was awesome.
And he's way overconfident, and out of nowhere, the most blood-curdling scene at the end of this, where he gets his teeth knocked out,
Yes.
and then his skull just crushed and literally popped.
Yep.
Oh, it's so hard to listen
it
to
is.
it. The sound effects are disgusting.
Yes.
Brutal.
Yes,
Nightmare inducing.
to me, the punching of his mouth where his teeth go flying is worse than blowing his head up.
Yeah, it's the sound.
Yes.
It's the
Yes.
sound effect of like, that's exactly what I imagine what that would sound like.
Yeah, really bad. Okay, no, and I think that is a good one because at that time too, you're just thinking, just stab the guy, just finish it.
Yeah.
Just finish the fight.
And you
Stop
see it in like
running your mouth and just
Tyrion's eyes when he's like, "Okay, you're my combatant. Just kill
Yeah.
the dude."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, for those of you who might not know, this entire two-part episode will be basically full of spoilers. So
yes.
obviously
Sorry,
at the time,
oh yeah, spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
yeah, King Joffrey gets poisoned at his wedding.
Yeah.
And R.I.P. Joffrey. And he basically, the queen, Cersei, who's Joffrey's mother, blames Tyrion, her brother, basically, for the poisoning. And throughout the show, they can do trial by combat to prove you're guilty or innocent, right? Which is just great. And Oberyn...
And you can have representatives fight for you.
Yes, yes. Because obviously a Tyrion versus the Mountain would not have lasted very long.
No.
And Oberyn gets selected because of his past experience, basically that his family of Dorne has had with the Lannisters, and the idea that the Mountain, basically at the behest of Cersei's father, basically butchered his family.
Which is a bit ironic because he's defending a Lannister in the process too.
Yeah, but he's doing it to get to the Mountain.
To some-
Yeah,
And
yes,
the Mountain's the
I
one
get
that
that.
basically killed his sister,
Yeah.
and so that's, he's coming for that.
And his nieces and nephews.
Correct. Yep. I agree. This was a really cool episode. This is probably one of the better fights. Right? I mean, it was really good.
Yeah.
And Oberyn was such a cool character
man.
that came in and really commanded the show from the first time he makes a scene. And when he's in, he's in the brothel. He's in the brothel
Oh,
in the
yeah,
first
that-
episode. You see him, and he's just, I don't know, he's just not what you think he is, right? And
They introduced Dorne as a kingdom or
Yep.
country, and it's a very different place than like
Yes.
everywhere else in
Yes.
the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, and obviously we like Pedro Pascal on this show.
Yeah.
So he's really, that was a really tragic death. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I think this one's probably a lot of people's picks for this, but I'm going to go with the obvious choice of probably Ned. Just right off the bat, it's subverting expectations, and I'm going to cheat a little bit and loop in multiple Starks
Go ahead.
to this if that's okay as well. Because the
That's
Starks...
cheating. That's cheating. You're trying to one-up me. I'm just kidding.
But the Starks are essentially one of the few noble houses. There are certainly bad things that they've done that you learn more about. But in terms of, especially when compared to everybody else, their nobility is clear. And Ned's just kind of out of his depth with how conniving and backstabbing people are willing to be. And it's at that moment, right before he gets killed, you're expecting, oh, maybe the cavalry will arrive at this point in time. And it doesn't. And it sets the tone for the entire show to follow from there, that nobody's safe, and you will not expect everything that's going to happen. So that definitely caught me off guard, because I was so wishing that he would live through that. Obviously, he does not. So.
Agreed. And our special guest said the same thing. He
Okay.
selected Ned as well. And he said it's because this sets the table that nobody is off limits in this show.
Yeah.
Right? And at the time, he brings up the point that, Ned, and I kind of prefaced this earlier, Ned's kind of the main character. And he's, he probably is the only show's main character. You could say, like, this guy is probably the main focus. He's the main control. And to kill him off is pretty gutsy, because he's also probably one of the more well-known actors in the show at the time.
That too, yeah.
And not only that, but they kill him off so early.
That is one. Yeah.
So I agree. Now, for me, unfortunately, because somebody had spoiled that for me, I knew that death was coming. So I can't say that was my most shocking.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the deaths that were the most shocking to me, I do think that the Red Wedding is shocking just because I did not read the books.
Yeah.
So that was very shocking. Not so much that Robb Stark got killed, because I kind of figured he's setting himself up with the way the show was going, with going through the marriage with the other, I don't remember her name, Elisa, I don't know, whatever the other lady's name was, and Walder Frey's daughter, basically gets betrayed essentially. So I figured something would happen to him. I didn't think Catelyn Stark would die.
Yeah.
She, I thought, would kind of live through it, especially because they kill off Ned. But to be fair,
She's such a likable character.
She
And
was
noble
she
again.
Was,
just
she
like
wasn't
Ned.
bad, right? But I do think my most shocking character death would have to be Joffrey.
Okay.
I think Joffrey's death is the most shocking, because to me, I feel like he was the villain, the main villain of the show, that you wanted him to get it so bad, and I figured that because you wanted it, because he was such a jerk.
Oh, yeah.
And because you wanted him to get it, I just figured you'd never get that.
Right.
You never get this. You never get this. I figured he would be off limits. That I guess I didn't think he wouldn't die. I didn't think he'd die like that randomly.
At his own wedding.
At his own wedding.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they build it up so well with
Yes.
Tyrion, and how horrible they make him look, or
Yeah.
just present himself
Totally.
at his own wedding.
Totally agreed. I felt like when he goes down, especially and I don't remember the actor's name, but man, something Gleason, I think was his last name.
Yeah.
That kid was phenomenal. Like, you hate that kid. Until Ramsay Bolton shows up, this guy was probably the most hated character on TV for quite a while.
Oh, for quite a
Even
while,
with his
yeah.
last breath, he points at Tyrion, like setting up all these other course of events in the process too.
Yeah. I mean, just because, especially too, his character, Joffrey's coming into his own, not listening to his mother anymore, kind of not really listening to Tywin, his grandfather, as much. Like, he kind of sits like he's about to, become his own man here, and, probably do some really horrible stuff.
I think he does that in season 1 when he kills Ned.
Sure, he does, but you can, I don't know.
He's like, these are the laments of soft hearts of women, and then he's like, we gotta kill him.
well, beheading people's not, let's be fair, Ned beheads somebody in episode 1.
Yeah, it's the first thing.
Right.
It's the
First
official action he really
it's
takes.
the first thing you see him do is behead somebody because he broke his oath. Right?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, he was deserting, essentially.
Yeah. Any other shocking deaths you can think of besides those? I mean, maybe not most shocking. So we've got Ned, we've got Joffrey, we've got Oberyn.
Oh, I will. It still was kind of shocking when I actually saw it. Ned was an easy pick for me for this category just because I was watching the rest of the series as much as I could anyway. So far after it had already aired that I heard of most of these. Ned was the one that caught me off guard because it was close enough to when the series first started. I had heard about all the deaths. So, but that being said, Hodor as well.
Okay.
That really got to me when seeing him get hold of the door, and then the fact that Bran having warged into him, but then younger Hodor sees his future self getting killed and he has the seizure, and I thought that scene was really pretty powerful actually. So seeing that, even though I knew it happened because I'd read about it, watching it was pretty impactful. So yeah,
I would say the Tyrells.
Okay, yeah.
I would say Cersei's Godfather moment where she basically wipes out everybody in the finale of that episode. I mean, it's just like a Michael Corleone move here. She takes the entire group of people, she has them in one location, she kind of takes out one guy here, one guy there, but basically just destroys everybody in one swoop. And let's be fair, I like the Tyrells. I think that Marjorie was really popular. Lady Olenna, I think is her name, who's the grandmother, was really popular. Nate really liked the Prince of Flowers, and I think that was such a really awesome move for her character. And then obviously you get that her son jumps out the window to his death afterwards. Whatever, he wasn't fit to be king anyways.
I had two honorable mentions.
Go ahead.
So I did like Ingrid, which was the redhead, Jon Snow's love interest as the wildling.
Kit Harington's real life wife, maybe, or girlfriend.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with the scene, it's the battle of the Night Watch versus the wildlings, and she has an arrow pointed right at him. She's drawn her bow, and all of a sudden she's stopped. She realizes it's Jon. She's not gonna let go, and she just takes an arrow straight through the chest. And it's like this 8-year-old kid from the Night Watch that somehow was trained by Jon Snow.
Well, hold on. So I had this conversation with Joe earlier.
Yeah.
People forget this kid has a reason to hate the wildlings because in season 4, I think it is, they show his family's village getting slaughtered by wildlings. And I don't remember if Ingrid is there. It's more those bald guys with the scars that are kind of more cannibalistic.
Right.
And they basically talk about eating his mother, and they let him live to go tell the story. So to be fair, his viewpoint of wildlings are they're butchers.
Yeah, it's so hard to watch because then he looks over at Jon Snow and gives him a wink and a nod like he did a great heroic thing.
But to that kid, he did do a great
heroic thing. Yeah.
But you as the viewer, such
I know.
a terrible
Right.
thing.
And that's where I'm so glad you brought that up because once again, unfortunately, having read about it before I saw that, I had heard that people kind of hated that kid actor for having killed Ingrid.
Yeah.
But then watching it, I was like, he has no idea who this person is.
Even if he did.
Yeah.
Even if he knew that John liked her, first off, they're not hugging. She's pointing his arrow at her.
Right.
Okay?
It's a victim of circumstance, kind of.
Yeah, and obviously, I would have loved her character to have lived through that because I still wish to a certain extent, which isn't going to happen, that there's somewhat of a silver lining and happy ending. But it's Game of Thrones, so
speaking of
Not
that,
for Jon Snow,
so
probably.
speaking of that,
probably not for Jon Snow.
one name we didn't put on here was Jon Snow. Was anybody shocked that when he technically died?
Yeah, we didn't even list that.
I know how easily we forget he's resurrected.
Somebody spoiled that one for me too.
Yeah,
so it was stupid.
Once again, I
book
read
thanks,
about
book
that,
reader. I think that's where the books ended up too. I think that's the last part of the books is his death. So
okay.
I don't think book readers, if you were just going by book readers and not people that didn't watch the show, I don't think would know Jon Snow came back. But that kid stabs Jon Snow, and then Jon Snow hangs the kid. So that kid ends up dying.
Right. And now him killing Jon Snow, I absolutely understand why people would hate his character for doing that, for sure.
How about Jon Snow hanging the kid?
Ugh.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Because he's pretty heartless about it. He's probably he's basically no.
Well, yeah, and that's something too, kind of watching Jon Snow's character progression throughout the series and how by the latter seasons he's out of F's to give about certain things, and he still kind of carries this noble air about him. I'd say he's probably still a character you can root for over the plethora of other characters, but he makes some questionable decisions, I would say.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, you said you had a second.
Yeah, so
honorable
my
mention.
last honorable mention was actually Tywin Lannister.
Oh, okay.
How great of a patriarch he is through the early seasons of this, and how, I don't know if we call it ironic or just like karma, this super noble being who's incredibly intelligent dies sitting on the pot,
Right.
because his own son shoots him with a crossbow.
Yeah. No, that's a good one too. I really like Tywin.
But nowhere near as maybe shocking as some of those other ones.
So, next one then. Let's do. Let's go with say most deserved death. Like, which character do you think deserved what they got?
I mean,
The most. How about this? The most.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Ramsay.
Okay. Why?
He's
He's pretty
so
bad.
awful.
So easy
He
to
is
hate.
beyond the pale of terrible. Like, he makes... I don't want to say he makes Joffrey look like he's not all that bad, because that's a lie. Joffrey's still awful as well. But the fact that, kind of to your point earlier, I think that you said, Garrett, where Joffrey is such a terrible human being, and you think he's going to continue to be the villain, and then he does die, and you're like, oh god, how are they going to...
Yeah.
Like, how are they going to top this? And along comes Ramsay and his...
Let me ask you about Ramsay. Do you guys think he was a horrible person when he was simply torturing Theon Greyjoy?
Do I think he was a horrible person?
Sure.
Yeah.
Imagine where Theon Greyjoy comes from. He's turned on Robb Stark. He basically, I'm trying to think of I can't remember the guy's name. He took out Maester Luwin. He burns the 2 farm kids to death.
Yeah.
Like, did people really hate him when he was torturing Theon? Or did they only really hate him when he started, like, really torturing, like, Sansa? You know, what do you think, Nate? What's your viewpoint on Ramsay? And, like, obviously, he deserves to die. He did some pretty despicable things.
In every like torture scene that he's in, you can tell he's enjoying every minute of these situations.
Sure.
You tell how like twisted of a mind Ramsay actually is.
Well, they are Boltons. They do have, like, their sigil is like the filleted man, right? Like, their whole premise is like
That's
they are
crazy.
torturers that like skin people alive.
Yeah.
You know, that's the premise of his character.
Right.
And he's also a bastard as well, right? So he's not even a full Bolton. So he's kind of like a Jon Snow stand-in for like the dark side.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's a good mirror.
That's all he's
image.
ever known his entire life, and he
Right.
just totally lives up to it and wants to become more. But his only way of doing more is by creating horribleness in the world.
Yeah. What about you, Nate? Who do you think deserves it the most?
You're not gonna like this one. We talked about this a little bit beforehand, but I'm gonna say Walder Frey.
Okay.
And if you don't know Walder Frey, he's the really old dude that convinces Robb Stark and Catelyn Stark to come to the Red Wedding, where he ends up murdering them for the Lannisters, essentially.
Yes.
To make an alliance with the Lannisters. And Arya, she receives the training from the Many-Faced God. Beforehand, she ends up killing his immediate family, makes them into a meat pie,
Yep.
which she serves to Walder Frey,
Yep.
slices his neck,
Yep.
takes his identity, invites all of the other Frey family members to a party, and poisons the entire family.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It's a high body count.
It's a high body count.
So our special guest came up with, he thought Peter Baelish, Littlefinger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, he would say his rags to riches story, because he is if you remember his climb up the chaos ladder, right? He is a guy that kind of builds himself up from the bottom to the top. However, he's the guy that ultimately betrays Ned Stark.
Yep.
He's also the guy that starts this entire thing in motion. There's a scene with I think it's the Lady of the Vale. It's Catelyn Stark's sister. I don't remember her name. He's the one, Aunt Liza or something. He pushes her out the moon door, whatever. Right?
Yep.
She was married to Jon Arryn, who was the original Hand of the King. Okay, to Robert Baratheon. She helps poison him. Writes the letter to the Starks, thinking, basically blaming the Lannisters and starting like this whole thing in motion. So Littlefinger's the guy behind everything. And
How naive is she to do all
she
this
was
stuff?
extremely
Out of love?
she was in love, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these people do a lot of stupid things in this show for love.
Yes.
I.e., Rob
That should have
Stark.
been one of our categories.
That's who does,
true.
who does,
Weirdest love
who does the
relationship.
most loved dumb things.
Love dumb.
Laura,
Yeah.
John, yes.
Part 2, love dumb.
So he would he would basically say Peter probably deserved it the most because everybody's death you could probably put him as an asterisk behind deserves it, right?
That's a great point.
I do think Ramsay deserves it. I think Walter has... I can kind of give him a pass. I get it. Ramsay's just a horrible person. I also think Stannis is a horrible person. And I think the idea that Stannis just starts burning people alive and then burns his daughter alive
Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely gets everything he deserves. And should have got it sooner.
Yeah.
I think that... especially because his daughter, I think it's Shireen maybe is her name, was such a likable character and so innocent. And, had her own trivial, issues in life because she had basically grayscale essentially, right? That like stone skin. And the fact that he basically keeps trying to think he's, getting the Lord of Light's protection with Melisandre and his wife is crazy, guano crazy, and they basically burns his daughter alive. I mean, it was just I don't know. That was a tough scene.
It's like war doesn't work. We talked about this on previous podcasts about how war doesn't work unless you have people on opposite sides that think they're doing things for the right reasons. But Stannis Baratheon totally destroys his reputation in the process of gaining power.
Well, here's the thing.
Which makes him such a horrible person.
So our special guest did like me to point out that Peter is also used by people in higher powers than him, right? So he learns to play the game. To me, Walter does get wronged. There's something that wrongs him. Whether you agree that he deserves to kill a bunch of people is debatable. He gets wronged. And in this show, honors a lot of things. So, it's a very dishonorable thing what Robb Stark does. And we're going to debate that later. Stannis doesn't get wronged by anybody. He just burns his daughter alive for more power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Pretty bad. Ramsay is also a guy he doesn't really get wronged. He just where you're
Yes,
kind
the
of
way it
redeeming
is.
qualities.
well, the one thing where
Yes.
I feel like he takes the turn to no comeback is when his father Roose ends up marrying I think it's the Frey daughter, Walder Frey's daughter. They have a baby, and now he's no longer heir apparent,
Right.
and he feeds the baby to the dogs. You don't see it. But that essentially is where he kind of goes, way out there.
Yeah. Such a horrible
So how about this?
character.
On a lighter note, where do we go from there?
Person you wish survived.
So my number one on our list was actually Tyrell's, and I forget her first name.
Marjorie.
Marjorie. Is that
Or Lady Olenna. Lady Olenna's
Lady
the
Olenna, yeah, the older broad.
the old,
who I really enjoyed,
the old broad.
and I think a lot of people enjoyed, is just how conniving she was. She knew how to play the game. She knew where her power lied, and she could just read individuals so well, and just hide in the shadows on how things went. So, Marjorie is her granddaughter that marries Joffrey.
Yep.
And she kind of... She's not quiet, though.
She's kind of
very opinionated.
She's like a Cersei in the making. She's you could tell if she was in power for a few years, she could really be she's very manipulative, but she's not violent manipulative yet.
There's a very good conversation when Jaime Lannister actually kills her, where she just open books everything that she kind of did in the process, as far as, yeah, I killed your son, and I know you're hooking up with your sister, and she open books everything, and she slams that poison drink like it's nobody's business.
I totally forgot about her death, that she's not in the keep or whatever it is. Totally forgot about that
Oh,
scene.
gotcha.
That was
Yeah.
an epic scene.
Yeah.
And she is such a likable character too. But that was my favorite. I would love to see her survive and continue to play the game.
So what do you think, so if this character survives, what do you want them to do next? So let's say she survives and she doesn't drink the poison. Where does she go?
I want her and Cersei to go head to head, right? Because in the conversation that what is old lady?
Old Lena.
Old Lena. I'm just gonna call her the old broad. When the old broad is confessing kind of all of her sins to Jaime, she says, "My only mistake was not having enough imagination about what Cersei was capable of doing," which is kind of an interesting comment. To be like, she had no idea on how brutal or capable someone was of doing horrible, horrible things.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been interesting because I feel like we didn't get enough of the interaction between her and Cersei.
Oh, I agree. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that would have been a really interesting like pairing going forward, in which the show does a great job at kind of pairing people off. That would have been a really cool pairing.
So that's my favorite.
Joe?
Nice. Yeah, for me, it would have to be Rob. I would
You
say,
do like Rob.
I do like Rob.
Okay.
I like Rob quite a bit. And the reason why, in addition to just liking his character, is that think how interesting it would be knowing what we know now about Jon Snow's parentage and lineage, and now he is king in the North, right? Well, he bent the knee to Daenerys, I guess, in the most recent season, but still, king in the North. If Rob had lived, what would their dynamic be now between Rob and Jon Snow? I would really have loved to see how that plays out in the long run, because Jon Snow has gone, like you mentioned earlier, Nate, that kind of rags to riches story in a way. And now he is one of the most powerful players in the game.
Yes.
So I think had Rob been alive, he's so charismatic and he is capable. I would have loved to see that dynamic play out between Rob and Jon, but also Rob pitted against all the characters that are still alive in the show as well. I think that'd be a really interesting dynamic.
You know, it's interesting because the first time watching this show through, I was never really a big Jon Snow fan. Still not really a huge Jon Snow fan. I think I get his character's importance. I like the character. He's not like my favorite. I'm not rooting for Jon Snow. If they killed him off season 5, whatever it is, I would have been fine with it. You know, whatever. Watching it through this time, I really liked Robb Stark until he gets that other lady.
Oh,
Robb Stark, like season 2, was excellent.
Yeah.
His character was awesome. You know, and I think that there was such hope for him, and I just really enjoyed his character. And I was just like, you're watching him fall in love with this lady, and you're just like, what are you doing? You're like, in the game, you're winning every battle. Like,
yeah.
He's defeating him. Defeating Tywin at every turn. He's winning this war, and he just can't keep his head in the game. And that bugged me.
I think you blame women for that.
That's Nate, everybody. That's Nate.
Yeah, that's me.
So, for me, it's...
Just kidding.
For me, it's... I really wish Tywin would have lived. Kind of like you like the old matriarch. I liked Tywin. I thought Tywin was a great character. I thought that he brought a lot to the show as far as the Lannisters go. He was respected. He brings in like that intelligence factor of it. He brings in a seriousness factor to it.
He was level-headed.
He was level-headed. I liked his interaction with his kids and how he would just like stomp them. I just thought that was awesome. You know, like it was like I said, the best parts of the show are seasons like 1 through 3 when you have him as Hand of the King and he's going at it with Tyrion. He's going at it with Cersei. He's going at it with Jaime when he comes back. Like he's just awesome. He's in there with Lady Olenna too. Like their conversations when they're having a conversation about the wedding and who's going to pay for it. Great, because he's like, oh, you can pay for it, or I'm going to send your son to be the Night's Watch. You know what I mean? And he'll never be married, or I'm going to make him a Kingsguard. You know, and it was just these great sparrings between these awesome, like, old-time sages of their families. Really cool. Our special guest said Oberyn. He thinks he would have liked Oberyn to survive, because he thought if Oberyn would have survived, it would have brought Dorne into more of the story, which would have been interesting. However, he does not think that Oberyn can survive, because he thinks if Oberyn survives, you don't get Tyrion and joining Daenerys. Because does Tyrion leave if Oberyn wins?
No, he doesn't go into exile and try to hide from the.
I think he could leave.
Seven Kingdoms.
I just don't think he would leave right away, right? So his death really forces Tyrion. Not just that, but obviously Tywin's death forces Tyrion even more.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
So that was kind of his viewpoint on that, is that, you know, he didn't believe that. What I want to get to, this is a show that I think does an amazing job of this, is it can take two random characters, two totally different stories, backstories, futures, and pair these people off. And there's a lot of it. I want to go through some of these pairings You guys let me know if I forgot anybody. And then I want to discuss who the best pairings are. So I've got Arya and the Hound, Arya and Tywin, Brienne and Jaime, Jaime and Bronn, Tyrion and Varys, Tyrion and Bronn, Jon and Ingrid, Daenerys and Jorah, and Ramsay and Theon, or / Reek.
And don't be intimidated. We didn't know these names either. We had to look up most of these names. It's ridiculous.
So
Also, the spellings of these names were not correct when I tried to search them, but I found them anyway.
I'm sorry.
Do you know how many apostrophes are in these names?
Did you know that Outlook doesn't know how to spell Daenerys?
My friend Jamie.
Yeah. So how about you guys? Any thoughts on favorite pairings?
I rated these out of a system of 10. I don't know how you guys did this thing.
I did not rate on the system. So you go ahead and start.
I find it interesting that none of your pairings have a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. I got a 9 out of 10. Okay, Arya and the Hound. You just hit them real quick. Arya and the Hound, 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10?
I gave 7 out of 10.
Okay. That's a
lot of great interactions.
That's a hot take.
That's a hot take. So cool me down,
Nate
listeners.
before the show asked, what does a hot take mean? And I will tell you that is a hot take, that's a 7 out of 10 when you have 8s and 9s on the board.
Yeah, we'll have to wait for those.
Okay, go ahead. Why is it only a 7?
I think it's a 7 because there are obviously better ones than that. But I do enjoy the Arya versus the Hound. Not versus the Hound, but their interactions where you have like a mature older man and a super young child who's out for like vengeance on all these things. And the Hound is just like this old, he's been in battle, he's killed a lot of people, and she doesn't know what she's talking about, sort of thing. But their interactions are just so funny. Hers are all emotional, and he's just like a dead monotone response every time. I remember one interaction, like he's taking care of her, he's trying to keep her safe, and she takes a big stone and is about to throw it down on his face, and she goes, "All right, you get one shot, but if you don't kill me, there's gonna be trouble."
Yeah.
You know. He just doesn't take her seriously at this point. And then even when she shows him like the sword fighting that she's learned from the water dancing.
Yeah,
the water dancer. He's like, the verbiage that the Hound uses is very different from Arya.
The greatest sword fighter in the world doesn't use a sword.
Yeah, he doesn't carry a sword.
That is
How many people killed him?
that is a great interaction.
All right.
Okay, hold on. You're not done yet. This
you want me to go down the line?
Let's do this.
This list needs defense.
All right,
First
you guys interrupt me.
That's right. I see that Arya Tywin is crossed off your list.
Yeah, that just didn't interest me.
Why can you cross my choice off your list?
Well, tell me why you think it's interesting.
I think Arya and Tywin is great
Convince me.
because this is the first pairing you get of Arya. And you can't really tell. I mean, I think it's safe to say Tywin doesn't know it's Arya. Right? Littlefinger, I think, will later suspect it's Arya. But this great pairing that almost is one of those things where it's like the closer you are to danger, the safer you are. Like that she's just right under his nose.
Right.
And she's learning a lot from him.
That's a good point.
He respects her because she can read. She's very smart. I think it's safe to say his character knows that she's lying to him about where she comes from. But it's just, I think this is her first inclination of a pairing that she's learning off the person she's paired with. And I think she's learning power. She's learning politics. She's learning a lot of things. But I want to come back to that particular pairing later because to me, my hottest take is she's to blame for a ton of things in the show during this pairing. And you crossed it off your list.
I guess that counts for a 0 out of 10. It didn't interest
I guess
me.
that's what that means.
Okay.
All right. We'll go on to the next one, unless Joe.
I'm interested to hear this. You go right ahead.
Yeah,
Brienne and Jaime
is a 7 out of 10.
I get a 7 out of 10 too, because it is interesting to have a person of nobility who's one of the greatest warriors in all the Seven Kingdoms come up with a woman knight from another Knight's Guard, a lower kingdom's Knight's Guard.
It's like 6'10".
And then she's like 6'10", and just kind of like boss him around, kind of to where he has to take a back seat to her.
Well, she does beat him in a sword fight on the bridge right before he gets captured by, I'm trying to think what the guy's name is, cuts off his hand later. But to be fair to Jaime's defense, is he had been sitting in as a prisoner in a camp for like a year. So like he's not probably the most like up to up to snuff on the fighting.
Right.
Although she's obviously bests everybody.
Brienne's awesome. She's
Yeah,
one of
she-
my favorite characters on the show.
beat
Has she
the
ever
mountain.
lost a battle? I mean, like a one-on-one duel?
She probably would have lost to the bear.
I
She
find-
gets in the fight with the bear. They basically throw her in the pit with the bear. Remember that? Like
Yeah.
in season 2, maybe?
I'm curious your thoughts on the Arya versus Brienne duel, which we can revisit later if
Okay.
that fits into your Arya conversation.
We
you
can
wanna have,
revisit
so.
that, yeah.
All right, so some good conversations and an interesting dynamic between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next one is Jamie and Braun. I had this one 8 out of 10.
These guys are
It's
good.
a-
They come on late, too.
Yeah.
So Braun, I think, is first introduced to Jamie to train him to fight as a one-armed man,
Yes.
essentially.
Yeah.
Jamie, I think, is right-handed, or is he left-handed? He gets his
He gets
left hand cut off?
he gets his right hand cut off.
He gets his
He's
right
gonna
hand
learn
cut
how to use
off,
his left hand.
and he has to use his offhand to learn how to as his main hand for battle. And Braun is like, that's a good dynamic as well, because you have this noble knight who fights with armor and the greatest weapons, and then you have Braun who doesn't fight with hardly any armor, and he just like has these little daggers, or he'll sneak attack or something. It doesn't fight with honor at all, but it's like live or die situation with him.
Right. Right. I like that, too. Braun is I'll be on the record, Braun's my favorite character of the show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's my
overall favorite character.
favorite character of the
Okay.
show. I don't know if he'll survive the show,
I don't. Yeah.
but he's by far my favorite character. He's just the best.
He's probably the most. He would not be good in the Game of Thrones, but he is the most honest about where his position lies.
Yeah.
It's money, it's women,
And it's a castle.
and I want a cast.
And that's what's great about
castle
Jamie.
and a
Is Jamie goes,
title.
"I'll get you a better woman. I'll get you a bigger castle if you come to Dorne with me." You remember that? And he goes, "Better be a pretty big castle." Okay, keep going. That's a good one.
All right. This is Tyrion and Varys. I also had this rated as an 8 out of 10 because going back into the drama of this series and the conversations that those two have, especially one conversation in mind is a conversation they have about power.
Okay.
And they discuss it, and Varys gives this weird scenario about I'm going to forget it, but there's a swordsman in the room, and then there's a king, a general, and a cleric.
Yeah.
And he says, who comes out alive,
Yep.
and who truly has the power to convince that swordsman to do what they want them to do.
Yeah.
And it's really cool about how their
Perception
thought
of power.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Agreed. It is a good pairing too. And they're both. What's great is they're equal. They're both intelligent. They're both playing the game. They're both conniving. You can't trust either one of them. They know you can't trust either
Right.
one of them, which is great. And so that kind of actually builds that trust and the mutual respect.
Yeah.
Ironically, that they know that, like, listen, at any point this guy can cheat me, and I can cheat him, and we know it. So I trust him. He trusts me, and they actually form a really good friendship. In fact, Varys basically saves his life. He's the one that smuggles him out to, Daenerys.
yeah.
Right. It's just so very interesting, to watch them dance around answers to where they don't give a direct answer, but in their response, the other person can read them well enough to understand what they intended to truly mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, watch their interactions. I'm sure they have highlights on YouTube. My 9 out of 10, and you'll enjoy this one, Garrett. Tyrion and Braun.
It's
a good one.
They're really good.
They're really good together.
yeah.
Because you have an intellectual who can't pretty much fend for himself at all.
Yep.
He's got a lot of money, wealth, stature, and then going on to Braun, who doesn't have any of that and is just fight to survive no matter what.
I mean, I remember how they get paired up because Braun fights for him as well in a trial by death
Yes,
as well with
exactly.
Catelyn Stark. I guess I don't remember. I have to go back and rewatch. Why is Braun there in the first place?
I forget how he
Because
brings himself to...
Because they don't become partners until after that because he wants to get paid. So it's in his interest to keep him alive.
One of my favorite lines is, it's Catelyn Stark's sister, whatever her name is, the Queen of the Vale.
Yeah.
And she points at him after he wins the duel, and he goes, "You didn't fight with honor," and he goes, "Yeah, but he did." as he kicks him down the moon hole.
Oh, it's so great. He's so good. I'll tell you, one of the things about Braun that I really wanted there's a scene at the Battle of the Blackwater between the Hound and Bronn.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
right before like Stannis' people show up. They kind of go face to face, and you're like, okay, this is awesome. Like, obviously they're singing the songs, they're drinking beer. Bronn's got like a naked chick on his lap, and the Hound's just like starting to get hammered, and they start, kind of like barbing each other with insults.
Yeah.
And like, it'd be interesting because obviously Bronn's got his hand on his quick dagger behind him, and the Hound's like, got this basically this claymore. That's a really neat pairing for these two awesome warriors.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
you're like, what would have happened if these two would have fought? Like, I'd have to go with Bronn's by being quicker, but I don't know.
Interesting, yeah.
Because
he
one's
pulls a
got
little bit of
full-
the mountain out of him,
Well-
and like they kill each other in the
Well,
process.
that's the thing. One's got full plate armor, and one's bigger, and one's got like leather armor and chainmail, and it's quicker. So I don't know. We can
Right.
debate that
Yeah,
later today.
yeah.
All right, moving on. Jon Snow and Ingrid
Yep.
as a pairing. I like her as a love interest, but other than that, I wasn't that interested. 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Okay.
I was like, meh.
Okay, Joe, you seem a little disappointed in this.
I'm not necessarily disappointed in that. I'm actually inclined to agree. Actually, not necessarily be disappointed in that.
6 out of 10.
Yeah, because once again, this is a pairing that was admittedly ruined for me by what I read before I watched.
Okay.
And so there's, I don't know, maybe 6 out of 10 is a little low if I had to score that. Maybe at least give it 7 out of 10 for the pairing. I think it's fundamental, especially, I mean, between Jon Snow's character growth and his interaction with the wildlings and everything that follows from there.
Correct.
And his attempt to negotiate with
Mance Rayder?
Mance Rayder, thank you. Yes. So to have that interaction and their relationship develop, and then leading to the episode at the battle where she is killed, I mean, the relationship itself is very important, I think, there. So I'd rate it, now that I'm talking about this, I'd rate it a little higher.
I think
than
it
6
should
out
be
of 10.
too, because I also think he learns like the idea of like living as a free person.
Mm-hmm.
Because up to that point, he's stuck to the Night Watch. He's stuck to this
Yeah.
honor and this code. And honor is such an interesting thing in this show, and like what people find honorable, considering so many people are dishonorable.
Yeah, exactly.
And then obviously it's an interesting love connection. We like the pairings. She's an interesting character. She was a really big fan favorite. I know that a lot of people didn't like the fact that she got killed off.
Right.
I know that I got particular friends that listen that their favorite thing to say was, nothing, Jon Snow.
Jon Snow.
It's just really, that kind of thought process.
Mm-hmm.
That she kind of, takes his virginity. Although it's really weird.
How
like,
dare she?
In a hot tub, basically.
Yeah,
Like
they should have stayed in the cave. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's a little bit low, but I understand.
We're on to the next one?
On to the
Yeah.
next one, Nate.
All right. Based on your spelling, Daenerys, or should I say Daenerys, and Jorah.
Listen, I call her, for the longest time, I just referred to her as Dragon Boobs.
Yes, yeah.
Really bad.
I just called her D.
I don't anymore. Now I call her like, what is it like?
Daenerys Stormborn, and then give her all her titles after
Yeah,
that.
all the titles.
The Unburnt.
30 seconds later, you know
Yeah.
who he's talking about.
This is Jon Snow.
This is Jon Snow. Gosh, that scene with Davos is so good.
Yes.
All right. The Nate rating of 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I do like this pairing because it's a super young lady who's like had pretty much been torn down her whole life by your brother.
Yeah,
But
That's an incredibly
learning how to
abusive
rule
relationship
from
there,
an
too.
older individual who's been around a while, and the feeling that you get that he doesn't really have any particular like affiliations so much as he respects her as a person.
Correct. But remember, in the first season, he's hired to spy on her. He's like a agent of the Baratheons, basically.
Mm-hmm.
As a slave trader. I think in the books, they go way more into detail of this. I believe he's like a slave trader. He gets kicked out of the Seven Kingdoms, essentially, or whatever it is.
Yeah, he gets exiled. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And that's something to. Sorry, Nate, can I jump in
roll
with that
with it.
too? Because I think Jorah's one of the. Well, they all have flaws in this show, but in terms of someone you kind of find yourself rooting for, I think he's maybe one of the most flawed as a result of that as well.
just pop it.
Yeah, just go for it. But yeah, this is also something in the book, because I did not realize this watching the show, that in the book this relationship would be a lot weirder because the age of Daenerys is so much younger, is my understanding. I did not realize that watching the show. So I get for people reading the book who find Jorah to be a lot more creepy than my initial thought of it was. Having now knowing the backstory behind that, I totally get. That's way creepier with the age difference in the books than what it's portrayed as on the screen. But yeah, I would agree. What did you say? 7 out of 10?
7 out of 10?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Okay.
7 out of 10 there.
All right.
Our
Last one we
objective
had.
rating system that we've got.
It's not objective. I certified it.
Nate's stamp of approval.
Yeah. Okay, so the last one on our pairings list is
Sorry, Joe. Joe
Yep.
just like hit the top of his beard and it's
Sure
gone
did.
everywhere.
act like you've opened a beer before.
I know. I'm
remember my
dropping the
first
ball
beer.
here.
All right, the last pairing that we had was Ramsay and Theon.
Oh,
I
yeah.
give this a 4 out of 10. I don't really like their interactions, mostly because they have to do with torture,
Torture.
and like feeling horrible about an individual
Yeah.
in a subjective manner, and the fact that my wife walked in on me on one of the torture scenes, and
Sex scenes, the torture sex scene.
yeah, torture / sex scene. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen it, but so that didn't really set a very good vibe to be like, hey, do you want to watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah. Well,
This is a great show I'm watching.
the irony you say
Yeah.
that is the first time that my fiance ever watched the show was right before the Red Wedding. Like she didn't sit down like right when it started, but probably about 10 minutes before it started. She just was like sat down. She goes, "I know you're watching the show. What's it about?" And then she proceeded to watch the Red
yeah.
Wedding with me, and that was like the last time she's tried to like find out what the show's about.
Yeah, that's a rough point of entry
Yeah,
for the show.
yeah. I think
for
it was
sure.
like stabbing the lady in the belly with the baby.
With
Kind
baby?
of probably
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe, we got through Nate's favorite.
yeah.
Okay, real quick question though. I just have a question. How come Tyrion and Bronn doesn't get a 10 out of 10, but it gets a 9 out of 10? What is it missing?
Every time I fill out like any sort of rating system, no one ever gets perfect because no one's perfect. Even when I rate myself. I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. It's a personal quip. I never rate anything like 10 out of 10.
Hey,
Your kids
all
are
right.
your kids are gonna love you.
4 out of 5. There's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I can tell you. Your daughter's gonna love you when she gets older. You're not perfect, sweetheart. Sorry. Okay, Joe.
Oh goodness, yeah, you guys. I won't revisit too much. We've kind of touched on a couple of the pairings that I found to be the best. I really do like Jaime and Bronn, especially in the events leading up to the battle in season 7 as well, where they get just some interactions while they're riding on the horses after the battle's there, which I thought was great. I also like in that scene where Daenerys is there with the dragons and Bronn straight up tries to hop on the arbalist and take it down. That kind of surprised me in that scene that Bronn steps up to try and bring this dragon down. So that was a cool moment
Show
for
like
Bronn.
a selfless act out of Bronn.
Yeah, exactly. Where I thought he was just going to keep running away in that scene, but he hops up there and tries to bring down the dragon, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Not to mention is Bronn who saves Jaime, I think, as well. He tackles him off the horse and is able to prevent him from being charred alive by the dragon.
Yeah, well, that goes into that Jaime Bronn pairing that you talked about too, and it's great how they gave us a pairing at the end of the show.
Yes.
So obviously, I know you were a big fan of that Magnificent Seven moment where the group goes north to go capture the Walker.
Yeah.
But there's really not many pairings left. And this Bronn Jaime one's kind of that one you're like, I want this to continue. And they have this friendship almost like, it's kind of supplanted. Like let's be fair, Jaime's character is growing to the point where everybody cares about Jaime now, and that we want him to survive. And the idea that we like Bronn, so we like these two characters. And obviously, specifically at that point, they are at the opposite end of the spectrum here because those two are looking at the dragon, at Daenerys, and they're on the opposite side. So you got to pick between him charging a dragon with Daenerys and Jaime. And who are you going to pick?
Right.
That was why I did think, I thought at that point, I thought that, is it Bronn that's charging or Jaime's charging?
I think Jaime's charging. And that's what I really loved about it is that it's Bronn that tackles Jaime off the horse to save
When I saw
him.
that, I originally thought that Bronn would die.
Okay, gotcha.
I thought that he would get Jaime out, but get nailed by the dragon.
Yeah.
Because I thought that there would be a Tyrion thing there, because Tyrion's watching this happen.
Yeah, that's right.
And I thought that obviously seeing Bronn die would have been kind of a blow to him. So,
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, some of the others I wanted to bring up that I consider kind of pairings, although some of them are perhaps shorter than the others on your
What
list.
rating system did you use?
I didn't rate the interaction between the characters, but would you consider Sansa and Littlefinger pairing as well,
Ooh,
especially moving into
for
season
sure.
7.
Yeah, we didn't have that.
So I think that is very interesting because culminating in Littlefinger's death, it shows how far Sansa has come and what she's willing to do, and the fact that she can play the game now. We talked a little bit before the episode about that as well. So she's learned from Littlefinger, she's learned from Cersei, she's learned from Ramsay, she's learned from her father. It's
interesting to say that because what about a Sansa Cersei? And granted, I apologize, I put this together, I forgot that one. What about a Sansa Cersei pairing?
Oh, that's
because
true
she
too.
does learn a lot from Cersei.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because we learn a lot. Each character seems to learn a lot from people they don't like.
Right.
Because Arya learns from Tywin. Arya learns a lot from the Hound. And keep in mind, the Hound's on her kill list.
Right.
Yeah.
Tywin's on her kill list. But she's learning from these guys. And I think that's interesting. Keep going, Joe.
Yeah, another one I thought of was Jon Snow and Tormund. As well,
People like him.
Tormund I think is a pretty cool character.
The Wildling.
and
Giant Spain.
Yeah,
The guy with the
Cool,
big beard.
yeah.
Yes,
That
I got the big beard.
That wants Brienne.
Yes, that likes Brienne. Exactly.
That crazy Viking dude. Yeah.
And I really enjoy the scenes, especially leading up to Hardhome and the battle with the Wildlings and the White Walkers, and Tormund and Jon realizing that they have got to figure something out. Like, these are characters that, for all intents and purposes, should hate each other.
Yep.
And they do realize genuinely, which is important to establish because there's very few people in this show that are doing anything for genuine interest out of the good of their hearts.
Yes.
So I think Tormund and Jon genuinely think they need to set aside their differences and figure this out, or everybody's going to die. So I think that interaction is really important. And then I really like circling back to, I call it the Magnificent Seven, going north of the Wall, how Tormund, Jon, the Hound, Beric, they all get to team up there. So
What a sweet team up.
yeah,
It was like everybody's favorite characters because one of the characters I really like is Beric Dondarrion.
Yes.
The guy with the patch. He's the one that gets killed by the Hound. He gets brought back to life by Thoros, who does freeze to death, which I didn't like because I liked him too. He's the Red Priest.
Yep.
And the idea that he's got those flaming swords, really cool.
Yeah.
Beric's probably my favorite character.
Okay.
If I had to pick one.
Right.
That might be a hot take there,
Okay.
but yeah.
No, that's fine. Our special guest did not give us a pairing. He's probably going to listen to this and come back, see us tomorrow, and give us his favorite pairing.
Right.
But the last category for this particular episode we'll do here, before we take a break here and everybody can get another beer, I want to do Best Betrayal.
Okay, yeah.
And I got some here for you. And if I'm forgetting one, you let me know. I've got Littlefinger with Jon Arryn's death. I've got Littlefinger with Ned Stark. I've got Varys and his betrayal of the Seven Kingdoms. Okay. I've got Sansa and her betrayal of Littlefinger. I've got Littlefinger and his betrayal of Sansa. And I've got Theon and his betrayal of Robb.
Weird how half the list, more than half the list, has to do with Littlefinger.
Yes.
Getting betrayed or betraying.
Yes.
Yeah, it is worth noting because I know once again our special guest who sent his thoughts over to us here, mentioning how Littlefinger is behind so much of this. I was noting that off of your list you provided to us as well. That Littlefinger really is. He's
the guy that's
so
pulling
much in motion.
Yes, he's pulling a ton of strings. There's a great scene. I don't remember what season it is. It's between Littlefinger and Cersei, and they're talking about power. And Littlefinger talks about how much power he thinks he has, and Cersei goes, "Oh," sees him, and her guards just grab him, and they go, "Kill him." And like she goes, "Okay, stop." And she's trying to prove a point that you really don't have any power, that I've got power. And I thought that was such a great scene and really put him in his place.
It did. Yeah,
and it's really kind of an interesting thing too, because I believe Littlefinger's also behind the poisoning of Joffrey. So he's like killing a lot of main characters here.
Yeah, because he kind of teams up with, I'm going to call her the old broad again.
Yep.
To make that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Put it in the works.
Yeah, and he's also the one that gets Sansa out of there then.
Yeah. He also creates that escape plan to win her love.
He's creepy. He's such a cool actor though.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of
Yes.
Gary Oldman. Do you get a
Does
Gary
a little
Oldman vibe? Like
bit.
every time I see it, I think it's Aidan Gillian. Every time I see him, I think he's the villain in The Fifth Element. And he's not, but doesn't Littlefinger
Yes.
looks like the villain in The
I
Fifth Element.
totally agree. Like a younger Gary Oldman from Fifth Element.
Yes.
I can't unsee that.
Which I think is
That's
on
all I'm gonna
Netflix
see.
now?
It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
That is a movie.
Fifth Element.
I know we're gonna go Game of Thrones heavy. That is a movie I want to cover sometime because Chris Tucker in that movie is great. A really cool movie. let's see here. What was our best betrayal?
Best betrayal,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Nate.
I gotta go first again. Okay.
Put you on the spot. Did you rate
all
these?
right,
Do you have a
fine,
rating
hold
system?
on. Okay, Joe.
Yeah.
Your best betrayal.
Yeah, so out of these, I'm going to go with Littlefinger's betrayal of Ned Stark.
Okay.
Once again, serving as the catalyst in a lot of ways for what will follow. And also, once again, we talked about subverting expectations, and that's one of the things the show does so well. It really set up the fact that Littlefinger, you end up hating him as a result of this. And Ned Stark, of course, was also one of my favorite characters. So to see him die as a result of that betrayal was pretty awful. So that'd be my top choice.
I'll go.
Yeah, I don't want to go last.
I think that Theon's betrayal of Robb
Also really bad.
is really bad.
yeah.
I think that obviously friendship in the show is extremely important when you can find them.
And weren't they damn near brothers?
He was
I mean, they were essentially.
so he was raised just like Jon Snow was
Yeah.
raised here. Theon was taken as a child though when the Iron Islands revolted and lost.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically taken as a ward of Ned Stark and raised. Now he was not raised as a Stark, but he was basically like best friends with Robb, like cousin, almost like a cousin probably of Robb Stark.
He's pretty cool in the first season, from what I remember, and how he like defends the family too.
Correct. He's essentially considered a Stark by them, and Robb considers him a brother. And the idea that he betrays Robb to a family, it's not that he betrays Robb to his family, because I do understand that there's nuance there, right? Like, let's be fair. Anybody could understand Theon wanting to be a part of his family. I get that. I'm not against him for that. I'm against him for wanting to be a part of his family who clearly doesn't care about him and want him there. Like, his dad clearly, his interactions with his sister on the way to the castle aside, which is just gross. This show does not shy away from incest, I'll tell you that. But, like, the idea that he's going to throw it away when there's true friendship there, that's because, to me, too, that's such a betrayal that really throws the power away from Robb. Again, pulls his attention, because I was
Yeah.
liking Robb more, too. And obviously, Robb gets pulled in different directions. I do think that Theon's sister, though, Yara, really cool character.
Yeah.
She's a really... I hope she... I don't know. I don't think she'll survive. But I do think she's an awesome character.
Yeah.
So I think Theon's betrayal of Robb is the most important.
My favorite
Or
betrayal
my favorite.
would probably be Jon Arryn's death
Okay.
due to Littlefinger. Except you don't learn that until so much farther into the series.
Yeah.
So, what I really enjoyed, and more recently, was Littlefinger and Sansa, where she really takes command of who she is as like a politician at this point. Mm-hmm. Kind of calls Arya into the Great Room, or whatever you want to call it, and then makes the charges. And then the twist is that she goes, Littlefinger, how do you... Not Littlefinger, but Lord Baelish, how do you... respond to these charges.
Yeah. No, that's a good one, too.
Yeah,
and
that definitely is.
obviously, him getting his comeuppance, everybody wanted that, too, from a while.
Yeah, and then in that same scene, you see Bran, like three of the Stark families in the same room together. You see Arya, Bran, and Sansa, and they all do their part as their kind of classes that are developed through the season. So, Arya the assassin, you've got Bran being the magician or whatever you want to call him.
Three-eyed raven.
Call out Peter Baelish as understanding exactly what he told them in confidence, like, and no one else was able to hear it.
You're a wizard, Bran.
And then Sansa command like the people in the room, which is just a really cool comeuppance of like the Starks' way up into power.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. And our special guest would agree with you, too. He said, without a doubt, this is the most important betrayal. Literally goes unknown for, like, seasons. I think it's, like, said season 3 or 4 that's when they release it.
And maybe you could argue it's not really a betrayal either.
Well,
as much as a surprise, because he had it coming to him. It's not like...
John Arryn's death I'm talking about.
Oh, Jon Arryn. Okay, sorry.
The John Arryn's death, the betrayal that he's poisoning John Arryn as the hand of the king, who's such a well-respected person, you know, to get Ned Stark out of basically retirement, essentially, to come to the King's Landing. Basically, like I said, he sets in motion of everything. All the events that are triggered this is the catalyst of the war.
Absolutely.
And obviously, Brandon can obviously see more of it, which is why it leads the viewer, us, to know that.
Right.
You know, I would also add to that. What is the first king, the Baratheon? What's his
Robert
first?
Baratheon.
Robert. What a silly way to die in like a hog hunting accident.
Oh.
Yeah, he kind of seems like he'd be such a cool character.
Yeah.
I know that they're going to do a prequel series, but I think it's going to be way prequel I think it's going to be way in the past. I don't think it's going to be close to this. I would like to see that. I'd like to see his character, like, younger, because he's got that Warhammer. I know that one of your favorite characters, and I think it's probably who I think you're going to think sits on the throne. Yep.
It's one of my more popular theories about how the series will conclude. Yes.
That's fine. Okay. Anything else to add on these categories?
No, not for these ones. Yeah.
Let's end this episode now. We're going to take a small break. Come back to you. Everybody get another beer. Go to the bathroom. We'll be back. I don't even know how long this next one's going to go. It might even go longer. But we covered a lot here. Anything to think about from the other categories? Anybody want to add anything?
If you have a better rating system,
I got one for you.
Feel free to
If you have a better rating system. I got a question for you guys. Do you guys wish Joffrey would have survived?
Nope.
no. He played his character out pretty well.
I know, but I would like to have seen his character like deal with what's coming. I would like to have seen him like as a wartime king.
Okay,
and like
I gotcha.
see him like what would his reaction be once Tywin's dead? If Tywin still would have died, what would Joffrey do going forward with these conflicts and these wars when there's like nobody to really run his war for him anymore? Mm-hmm. I think it would have been really interesting to see his character deal with that, and it would have been interesting to see his character grow. Like I think you could have kept his character alive and seen the growth of his character. Because I think it would be great. Sansa gets out of there, okay? Joffrey wants her back. I'd like to see a Joffrey Ramsay Bolton like fight over possession of Sansa. That would be really cool.
That would have been interesting to see that play out.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Until obviously we're going to be with you guys very shortly, so we're going to take a break. Everybody, let's get a beer, and we'll be back with you guys with part 2. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers!